Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. So we'll resume our discussion of Nectar of Instruction. Today we will be discussing text 3. Utsahanishchaya dhairya tat tat karma pravartana sanktyagat shato vrataha shatbir bhakti prasiddhyati. There are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service: being enthusiastic, endeavoring with confidence, being patient, acting according to regulative principles such as Shravana Kirtanam Vishnu Sparanam, hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna, abandoning the association of non devotees, and following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These 6 principles undoubtedly assure the complete success of pure devotional service. So, the focus now continues to be on bhakti. Right? So the last verse talked about the impediments, and this verse talks about the catalyst to pure devotional service. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, he talks about the impetus for bhakti. Like what is not bhakti? Sentimental speculation, imaginative ecstasy. What is bhakti according to the Shastra? How it is performed? Then why perform bhakti? Who is qualified to perform and where to perform? And we'll speak in details about each of these themes that Srila Prabhupada develops in his purport, and then the favorable conditions. So what is and what is not bhaktis? So the last 2 verses were yamas or prohibitions. And so the first one talked about the various vegas, the 6 vegas, and the second one talked about atyahara prayaschascha prajalpaniyamagra, the 6 not to do's. The next 2 verses, which is 3 and 4, will talk about the niyamas or the injunctions or the do's. So verses 1, 2 and 3 are in the category of Shraddha. They represent the transition into bhakti for a neophyte. So what is not bhakti? It is not a matter of sentimental speculation or imaginative ecstasy. Right? So many times people say whatever I do is bhakti. Now, this is very prominent in India. Right? They have so many sentimental speculation. Sometimes because it's coming in the family tradition, sometimes culture, sometimes just the person's own speculation that this is what I'm doing and this is bhakti, or imaginative ecstasy. Sometimes people say that, oh well, I don't need all the regulations of bhakti. Whenever I see the Lord, my eyes fill with tears and my body starts to shiver. And these are all imaginative ecstasies. They are not rooted in real bhakti. So what is bhakti, especially at this stage? It is practical activity. Right? So Srila Prabhupada begins by explaining bhakti in the context of the Shastras. In the Nectar of Devotion, Rupa Goswami, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.1.11, he defines bhakti as anabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadinavritam anukulena krishnanu shilanam bhaktiruttamam. That pure devotional service is favorable to the Lord, free of extraneous motives and devoid of fruitive karma, impersonal jnana and other selfish desires. And in the Nectar Devotion, when this verse is analyzed, we see that it gives a complete, comprehensive description of devotional service. So one thing that comes forth is that bhakti is an activity that is done. So it is something that needs to be cultivated. And what is the mood of that cultivation? What is Anushilanam? So in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, verse 34, Krishna says, Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. And he says that under the guidance of a guru, that one should inquire about the principles of bhakti from one who is practicing bhakti and who himself has heard from an authorized source. One who has himself controlled the 6 Vedas that was explained in text 1. And Mahaprabhu says that only a very fortunate soul comes in contact with such a great devotee. Brahman Brahmite Kono Bhagyavan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasade Paye Bhakti Lata Bija. Now one may say that if such souls are so rare, doesn't it mean that bhakti is also rare? And the answer is yes or no, yes and no. That yes, bhakti is indeed rare. When you look around yourself, you will find that very few people are practicing bhakti. But it is not because the opportunity is rare. It is because taking of that opportunity is rare. Like Krishna, he makes sure that when somebody has a desire, Krishna sends the bona fide guru to that person. It is now up to that person to take it to the next step. So, after having accepted the shelter of a guru, the cultivation of the guru, the cultivation of bhakti is according to the 9 processes given by Prahlad Maharaj. Shavanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedam. Right? So these are the 9 ways in which one can actually practice bhakti. Hearing and chanting about the transcendental name, form, qualities, paraphernalia and pastimes of Vishnu. Then Smaranam, meditating on him, Padasevaram, worshipping the lotus feet, Archanam, offering deity worship, Vandanam is offering prayers, Dasyam is serving in the mood of a servant, Sakhyam, serving as a friend, and Atmaniveda, complete surrender. So, in order to help one to make advancements, there are those that have perfected these processes in the past. So there is Parikshit Maharaj who perfected his devotional life by Shravanam, simply by hearing and the name and the glories. So all Parikshit Maharaj did was sit and hear Bhagavatam, but he was actively hearing. So any one of these 9 processes can take one to perfection, right? And Sukadev Goswami simply by Kirtana. All he was doing was sitting and speaking the glories of the Lord in the Bhagavatam. Vishnu's Paranam, Prahlad Maharaj, he was simply meditating on the Lord. Then Padasevanam, serving the Lord's feet, Lakshmi Devi. Also serving the Lord by one's feet, by Padyatras, etc. Then worshipping the deity Archanam, Prithu Maharaj, super excellent worship of Lord Vishnu in the deity form. Akrura by Vandanam, beautiful prayers that he offers when he enters into Vrindavan and sees the footprints of baby Krishna. Then Dasyam, Hanuman, in mode of servitude, eager to carry out the instructions of the Lord. Arjun by Sakhyam, friendly relationship with Krishna. And Bali Maharaj by Atmaniveda. So everything that Bali Maharaj had, he offered it to the Lord, and then the Lord placed his lotus feet on his head. Complete perfection. Right? And it is said that Ambarish Maharaj, he perfected all these 9 forms of devotional service. In the current day and age, Shravanam is the is the most accessible. And fortunately, it is also the most potent aspect of bhakti. All the other angas of bhakti, they emerge from Shravanam. And just Shravanam itself can take one to perfection. But devotees, they try to follow as many angas as possible. So Shravanam, hearing lectures, Kirtanam by japa, chanting, Vishnu Smaranam, chanting Gayatri and other forms of meditation, Padasevam, actively working in the temple, doing yatras, then worshipping the deity at home, Archanam, or if qualified at the temple, then Vandanam by chanting beautiful prayers given by the Goswamis and other Vaishnavas. And so in this way, they try to uh, to practice, cultivate devotion by as many angas as possible. Prabhupada also talks about the role of ISKCON in facilitating these various methods of cultivating devotional service. Right? So, just avoiding obstacles to the path is not sufficient. So, if one is able to control all the Vegas, one is able to control the Atyahara, Prayascha, etc., that uh, will prevent the person from being degraded. But it is not going to help the person make progress. Like the example is given that if the ships are in the harbor, they are safest over there. But the ships are not meant to be in the harbor, they are meant to sail. So the devotees, they are not meant to only expunge the negatives, they're also meant to actively cultivate the positives. So which is why while they're avoiding all the pitfalls, they actively cultivate the process of bhakti. So bhakti needs to be actively cultivated. Now one may say, why? Why do it? Go away from your comfort zone. Because it is rare, blissful and liberating. So this is experiential. That one actually feels bliss by the practice of bhakti. It is available to anyone who is a sincere practitioner. Right? So even though it is rare, it is easily available. The point was made that the rarity of the bhakti is not because it is rarely available, but because it is rarely cultivated. And the Prabhupada would say that ISKCON has no lazies and no crazies. So this was mostly the 60s lingo, because he would humorously call the hippies as lazies and crazies, because that was the mood of the hippie movement at the time, that they didn't believe in doing work. They actually considered taking a job as something really degrading, and most of the time they were crazy on drugs. But when they came to ISKCON, then all the time they were actively doing devotional service. Some of them were sleeping just 2-3 hours a day and doing some form of devotional service, and fully focused. The mind was fully disciplined. So Prabhupada says that the International Society for Krishna Consciousness is giving such a chance to humanity at large. If by fortune one takes advantage of this opportunity to engage in devotional service, the path of liberation immediately opens. This is why Srila Prabhupada established ISKCON. Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale. Right? So Rupa Goswami, he knew Chaitanya Manobhistam. He knew what the inner desire of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is. And he Stapitam Yena Bhutale. And he established this on this planet. And Srila Prabhupada, as a pure devotee, also understands the mood of Rupa Goswami, and he is continuing to propagate it. Prabhupada also says that ISKCON is opening many centers just to invite people to live in the company of devotees and practice the regulative principles of spiritual life. Because bhakti is best practiced in the association of devotees. Nirjan bhakti is very difficult to do because everybody around you is not doing that. Even in the association of devotees, it is difficult, but because the association is there, it makes it somewhat easier. So this verse talks about the ABCD of practicing bhakti. So it talks about attitude. So utsaha is enthusiasm, nishcha determination, and dhairya is patient. Right. So this is the attitude of a devotee. That whatever they do with enthusiasm. And in the face of adversity, they display determination. And even if they do not get the desired results, patience. They patiently wait for it. Then behavior, sangatyagat, that abandoning the association of non-devotees. This is the manifest behavior of practicing devotees. Then character, tat karma, acting according to regulative principles. So they display this strength of character of submitting to the rules and regulations of the instructions of the Guru and the instructions of the scriptures. And direction, shatuvrata. What is the direction they follow? They follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. Okay. So these are the 4 building blocks of bhakti: attitude, behavior, character, and direction. So we'll speak a little bit about each of these 6 aspects. Utsaha or enthusiasm. Right? So interestingly, enthusiasm comes from a Greek word called enthouthioso, which means one who is possessed by God, one who is divinely inspired. So when we are divinely inspired, we engage in devotional service. Or the symptoms of devotional service is this mood of being inspired by something bigger than us. Maybe the word of the Guru or the scriptures or Krishna, and that drives us. Then the enthusiasm is to always act for Krishna. Krishna artha kila cheshta. Right? So that is the positive engagement favorable to Krishna. Right? Kamsa was also very enthusiastic, but he wanted to kill Krishna. But for devotees, it is always favorable to Krishna or to his devotees. And action itself could be anything. There are so many ways in which one can serve Krishna. But the only requirement is that it is directed towards Krishna and is favorable to it. Right? So depending on the propensity of the devotee, one may serve Krishna in many ways. Someone is inclined to singing, so they may sing for Krishna. Somebody may be inclined for deity worship. The Prabhupada would say that person on the altar worshipping the deities and the person who is cleaning the bathroom, they're equally performing devotional service. Then action done under the guidance of a guru. Right? So the enthusiasm should be curtailed by the directions of the guru. Because enthusiasm is or could be, it could take one to different paths. There were once in one of the temples in California, there were once devotees who, in order to help the temple, they were distributing drugs. And then Srila Prabhupada noticed that the collection of this temple was much higher than comparable temples. And then Prabhupada inquired, and then there were a couple of devotees, they would go out and sell drugs and use the money to serve in the temple. And then Prabhupada said, you don't need to do that. Krishna doesn't need your money. He needs your bhakti. Everything else is just a media. right? So the guru is there to provide the guidance to how to correctly apply the enthusiasm. So when the soul is surrendered to the instructions of the Vedas, guru, then the soul gets connected to the super soul in the mode of dasya. And so surrendering with enthusiasm connects the soul to the super soul. And then the first thing the super soul does is to guide the intelligence. And then the intelligence controls the mind and the senses. So in this mood, the senses can freely engage with the sense objects. So what Prabhupada is describing here is how does a properly situated devotee be guided in the day-to-day affairs to execute bhakti. So the first step there is that one surrenders. Surrenders means that one uh, is accepting to follow the instructions of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. So when that surrender happens, then the connection to the Paramatma becomes prominent. And then the Paramatma takes responsibility for guiding the intelligence of the devotee, and the intelligence in turn controls the mind and the senses. So now that the mind and the senses are controlled by the intelligence which is guided by the super soul, then one is free to engage with the sense objects, because all that will be in the mood of bhakti, and this is called yukta vairagyas. So the question is that in the previous verse we had recommended to stay away from prayashchas, like over endeavoring. So what is the difference between utsaha and prayashchas? The difference is, where is this guidance coming from? If the guidance is coming from the conditioned intelligence of the jiva, it is prayashchas. But if it is coming from the super soul, from guru, from sadhu, from shastra, then it is utsaha. And Prabhupada is making this point scientifically over here, that when it is guided properly, then the activities are automatically dovetailed to bhakti. So even seemingly material activities, Prabhupada says they are yukta vairagya. Seemingly material activities, one may be going to one's job, but if one's intelligence is guided by the super soul, then that job also becomes a part of one's devotional service. But if the activities are guided by the material intelligence, then over endeavoring simply becomes an impediment to one's spiritual advancement. So something more about enthusiasm. So enthusiasm is an intrinsic quality of the soul. It cannot be curtailed. So when one takes to spirituality, then as we saw, the first instruction was to disengage from material pursuits. But the nature of the soul is that it is active, anandamai. It is seeking happiness. So the process of bhakti is now to take that enthusiasm and direct it to the service of Krishna. And in order to inspire this Krishna, he says that I will come again and again to help. So Krishna comes as many incarnations. He comes as the deity form to accept deity worship. He accepts as the Vedas so that people can study the Vedas, perform many pastimes that people can enjoy. All ways by which the soul can enthusiastically engage in relationship to Krishna. So Prabhupada summarizes that endeavor executed with intelligence in Krishna consciousness is called utsaha or enthusiasm. The devotees find the correct means by which everything can be utilized in the service of the Lord. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandham Yuktam Vairagya Uchyate. This is from again Bhakti Sastri Sindhu, where Yukta Vairagya is defined. The execution of devotional service is not a matter of idle meditation but practical action in the foreground of spiritual life. And this is an important distinction between devotees and Mayavadis and impersonalists, for whom devotional service is not doing anything. So they will sit around and think or meditate or read, but there's no active engagement. So they are going against the nature of the soul. They suppressing the Anandamayi nature of the soul. That is why after some time the soul will assert its propensity, but then it will manifest in different ways. So Prabhupada uses the example of dictaphone. And so when Prabhupada came, then somebody introduced the dictaphone to him, and Prabhupada immediately saw how it can be used in preaching. So he would dictate the purports into the dictaphone, and then his disciples would then later on type it up. Right. Now, a Mayavadi sannyasi may criticize it as dependence on material energy. Right. So generally, sannyasis are supposed to stay away from technology. They're all forms of material energy. But this is a form where Prabhupada was using it with properly guided intelligence in the service of Krishna. Right? So this is Yukta Vairagya. A dictaphone could be used for anything, but he was using it to write purports on different literatures. Right? And this is Utsaha, enthusiastically using it. Prabhupada, since again he is speaking to practicing devotees, he gives practical instructions on how to improve your enthusiasm. So one of the important ways is to associate with those who are enthusiastic. Enthusiasm is infectious. Then improve sadhana. So if you remember the point Prabhupada made, that once you are connected to the super soul, then the guidance of the super soul manifests in how you interact with things around you. And how does one connect better with the super soul? By strictly following the rules and regulations of devotional service. Preaching is a way to improve enthusiasm. As you give Krishna to others and you see them practice, then it increases one's own enthusiasm. Do it together. Right? So it's similar to associating with those who are enthusiastic. To act for the pleasure of the Lord, Guru and Vaishnavas. So this is the mercy component. That when one acts for the pleasure of Lord, sadhana is an example. So the principles of sadhana are given by the Lord in the scriptures. They're explained by the Guru and Vaishnavas. And one strictly follows sadhana, then they are acting for the pleasure. And the reciprocation is that one's enthusiasm increases. Shravanam, right, hear. Everything begins by hearing, especially Srimad Bhagavatam. In a Nectar devotion lecture, Srila Prabhupada gives an interesting solution. He says that if you're lacking in enthusiasm, this means that the sense objects have taken over the senses, or the senses have taken over the mind, and the mind has taken over the intelligence. Right? So it's now a reverse order. Generally, the intelligence should control the mind, and the mind controls the senses. But when a person is very materially absorbed, the hierarchy becomes opposite. The senses control the mind, and the mind controls the intelligence. So what to do? Prabhupada says, then you should rest. Instead of making too much agitation in the mind, just rest. If you cannot find out, sometimes something has dropped in the water, you cannot find it by agitating the water. Just stand still and let the water stand still. Then you can see what has been dropped. Then you can see things as they are. Find a suitable temple and go there and chant. There is no question of being disappointed. After all, we commit so many sins. That is human nature. To err is human. But one should regain with a cool head and the mind will come back. So very, very practical advice given by Srila Prabhupada. As devotees, sometimes they experience burnout. That they're doing so much service, and as part of service, maybe their energy is getting depleted. Maybe things are not working well with the other devotees that they're serving with. But then if they keep going on and on, at some point they'll burn out and they will simply, what was initially in ISKCON was called bloop, that they will simply just then go away. So Prabhupada gives a practical example that if you drop a coin in the water and then you're agitating the water, looking for the coin, you'll not find the coin. But if you take your hand out, let the water settle down. When the water settles down, then you can see the coin and you can take it out. Similarly, when the mind is agitated, then looking for a solution at that time is not going to work. So best thing is to step back, let the mind settle down, then the solution will appear. And what is the way to rest? So rest the body and chant. So as one chants, one's connection with the super soul becomes stronger. The guidance from the super soul becomes more manifest, and all the agitation because of the senses and the more subtle pressures, they become pacified, and then one is now in a position to regain their enthusiasm. So in a letter to one of his disciples, Prabhupada says best way to regain enthusiasm is to chant with devotees in the temple and have festivals. Prabhupada would say festivals are the mother of bhakti. And Prabhupada also writes, by visiting different centers, even though the building is the same and the deities are the same, your enthusiasm is invigorating. Right? So many devotees make this as a form of pilgrimage. There are hundreds of ISKCON temples in the US, and if you include over the world, there are several hundreds of temples. Now one might say in every temple that I go, I see Radha Krishna there, I see Gaur Nitai there. Sometimes I see Jagannath, Baldev, Subhadra, sometimes Sita, Ram, Lakshmana, Hanuman. You've seen one deity, you've seen all deities. But Prabhupada makes this point that maybe the deities are the same, but what you're putting in the equation is your enthusiasm for taking their darshan. And that's what will invigorate one's bhakti. So second is nishchayat, or determination. So determination is also confidence in the process. So the sadhana Vedi bhakti that you're doing, chanting 16 rounds, following the principles, confidence in Krishna, that Krishna is there. Confidence in Guru, that the instruction of the Guru are my life and soul. And confidence in Sadhu, in other Vaishnavas, that they are there to guide you. So that is Nishchayat. So Nishchayat comes into play when Utsaha is weak. Because if determination is not there and one is fueled simply by enthusiasm, then sooner or later when the enthusiasm wavers, one will simply become disheartened and leave. But if the determination is there, then one will persist. And because of that persistence, the Utsaha will eventually come back again. Why will it come back again? Because there is confidence in what Krishna tells us, in what Guru tells us, what the Shastra tells us. So it's like when a patient goes to the doctor and the doctor gives some medicine, many times the initial effect of the medicine is that it makes the symptoms worse. But if the patient has confidence in the doctor, then they will continue with the medication and then the disease goes away. Right? So that is the nishya that the devotees cultivate. So Prabhupada says that one may not have confidence in Krishna in the beginning, but one must have confidence in the process. Because in the early stages, and early stages doesn't mean the first few months, early stages can probably mean the first few lifetimes. One is, Krishna is more of a theoretical concept. One may be chanting and doing deity worship, and in their mind they may be saying that this is Krishna is manifest in his sound incarnation or in the Archavigraha form, but it is not experiential. But the determination is that while I am not seeing Krishna in the name, while I am not seeing Krishna in the deity, but I have confidence that as I follow this process of sadhana Vedi Bhakti, I will begin to experience it later. Right? So that is determination, having confidence in the process. Srila Prabhupada makes this, disciples would often come to Srila Prabhupada and ask this question that, Prabhupada, are we making progress? How do we know we are making progress? Right? Prabhupada will say, yes, you're making progress, but progress is imperceptible. Like, the example of a million sunrises, that if you're sitting during dawn and at some point it is dark and at some point it is light. Now during that time you cannot really exactly say that when did the night end and when did the day begin. It was a gradual process. So sometimes people say the sun will rise at 6:30 a.m. But actually even before that the sunrise begins to come, and even after that the sun continues to rise. Right? So if one has confidence in the process, then one will understand that progress is inevitable. But progress does not happen as sometimes people expect it to happen. Like sometimes they show in movies that suddenly there is a bright light, there's a blinding light, and Krishna is in front of the person. Right? So from being completely materialistic, the person suddenly becomes pure devotee. Right? And so that does not happen. Actually, as we follow the process with determination, then gradually our material conditioning is eradicated, and our spirituality begins to reassert itself. So why is the progress imperceptible? Because the cleansing is minute and gradual, but it is nevertheless there. This sense that there is progress is nishchayat. This comes from faith. So faith means believing something that you cannot validate yourself. But this is not blind faith. This faith comes from knowledge. Knowledge of what has been spoken in by Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. Faith is the perception of the sublime and seeing what you cannot perceive. When that faith allows you to act, that is confidence. For instance, one may have faith that the books can change lives. Only when you have that faith can you go and distribute books. Because faith is also infectious. When you yourself have, Srila Prabhupada said that before you distribute my books, you read my books. And not only read, when somebody has faith that this book will actually has changed my life and will change your life, then the books will be easily distributed. And success is assured, right? And as a reference to 40, Krishna himself said, Neha Bhikrama Nashasti Pratvayana Vidyate, that a little progress on this path will save one from the most from the most horrific destination, right? Which means that the progress will give assurances that the human form of life is always avoided. What does determination mean? That even if there is a setback, the person will will persist. Because for a devotee in the earlier stages, they're actually trying to navigate with 2 feet on two different boats. And there will always be challenges there because they are still materially invested and they're trying to develop their spiritual aspect. So invariably there will be setbacks. But nishyat means that despite that, they will continue. So sometimes devotees, when their nishyat is weak and there is a setback, they will leave. But even when they leave, their progress is preserved. And when they come back, they will resume from that point. So what is the other form of nishya? We have confidence that Krishna will always protect me. Right? Krishna gives that assurance in 931. Kaunteya pratijani na me bhaktiya pranashyati. Right. So the devotee thinks avashya rakshabe Krishna. That Krishna will surely protect me and give me help for the successful execution of devotional service. So this is another form of nishchayat. That a person is confident that the protection of Krishna will be there. Otherwise, they may get disheartened by the forces of material energy. And on their own, they will never be able to battle them. But once that determination is there, then one is able to engage in devotional service. So this protection is much more, or this confidence in protection is much more than one can get from any other methods, because this is coming from Krishna. So other forms of confidence or nishya manifesting. Engagement in the devotional service of the Lord is the life and the soul of the living entity. It is the desired goal and the supreme perfection of human life. So one should have faith in this so-called what do they call them, like mottos, something that encapsulates one's conception of bhakti. So what is this saying? That the intrinsic nature of the soul is bhakti. So one should have faith that one is not doing something that is against their intrinsic nature. In fact, everything else that they're doing is against the intrinsic nature. That feels natural because it is conditioned. Then Nishyat is also protection of the Guru. Right? Have faith that my Guru will protect me. Srila Prabhupada once says, I don't know Krishna, but I know Bhakti Sastri Thakur. Right? So in humility he is making this point that all I know is my Guru. Right? How do we know the protection is there? So in the Nectar of Devotion it is said, I do not have love for Krishna, the power of yoga or knowledge or piety. But oh my Lord, I have heard of your immeasurable mercy. Now prema shravanadi bhakti janam va. Right? So this is the mood of a devotee. That the person in humility thinks that I do not have love for Krishna. And I don't have other protections. I don't have the siddhis from yoga. I don't have the gyan by studying the scriptures. I don't have the karma, the piety that comes from karma. But what I know is that my Lord is merciful. that he will always protect me. Right? So that is the confidence that I can have. So depression is frustrated arrogance. So two sides of the false ego, right? So if a person does it and succeed, then he becomes proud. If he does it and fails, he becomes depressed. So they are both coming from the same fountainhead of arrogance. If they do it and succeed, then there is pride that I succeeded by my effort. If they do it and fail and then get depressed, then there is that arrogance that I am the cause of the failure, nobody else. So both of them are centered around the self of the sense of self. But when one is able to dovetail this with Krishna's mercy, that if I do something and succeed, it is because Krishna was kind. If I do something and fail, it is because Krishna wants me to learn something. So that sense of being depressed is replaced by quiet confidence. Srila Prabhupada gives the example of the sparrow and the ocean. It comes in Garud Puran, where once a sparrow had laid eggs on the bank of an ocean and the ocean stole her eggs. So the sparrow was very upset at the ocean and it said, "You give me back my eggs or else I'll empty you." And the sparrow has a small beak and the ocean is practically infinite. So the ocean laughed at the sparrow. And then the sparrow, it started going, taking one beak full of water, putting it on the bank, another beak full of water. And the ocean was laughing and everybody else was laughing. But then when Garuda saw how the sparrow was sincerely striving in its endeavor, Garuda came to the ocean and said, "Now I will empty you." So while the sparrow could not empty the ocean, the Garud was more than capable of emptying the entire ocean. So the ocean immediately returned the eggs to the sparrow. So that is our mood. That when we work in the mood of the sparrow. We work with determinations, but not with pride. But with this understanding that our sincere determination will attract the mercy of Guru, of other sadhus, and of Krishna. Okay. Now, third, which is dhairyat or patience. So one should not be impatient in discharging devotional service, but should take instructions from the spiritual master and execute them with patience, depending on the mercy of Guru and Krishna. The successful execution of Krishna conscious activities requires both patience and confidence. So, just like confidence helps a person when their enthusiasm is weakening, patience helps the person when they are not getting what they feel that they deserve fast enough. And sometimes devotees chant for a few days and come back and complain that we don't feel any different. But the process, as Prabhupada says, it is working, but it is working gradually. There are many lifetimes of contaminations that are gradually eradicated. So one should have patience that this is happening. Prabhupada gives the analogy of a newly married girl. That when a girl marries, then typically they want to be a mother. But there is a process. The girl has to get together with the husband, wait for 9 months, and then if it is ordained, then the child happens. So similarly, the devotee surrenders to the process, to the instructions, executes them, and then patiently waits for the promised results to come. Else, one will just be. So this was a term that was coined in ISKCON earlier on. PDS is called pure devotee syndrome, where people artificially force a result. So they chant one day and the next day they come and they say, I have nothing to do with this material world. I have nothing to do with my family. I'm completely now detached. And so there have been instances of this happening. But because it is artificially imposed, it goes away very quickly. Fourth is tat karma pravartanat, which is acting according to the regulative principles. Specifically, during initiation, the disciples commit to the four regulative principles of no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, and no illicit sex. But also the larger regulative principles that are coming in the scriptures. So one must follow them enthusiastically. So many times, even though they're followed with a lot of resentment. That because of no meat eating, I'm not able to eat almost anywhere. This is such a restriction, right? So tat karma pravartanat means that with utsaha one is following these regulative principles. That I'm happy that this regulative principle is there because I'm protected from the sins of eating the dead flesh of other living entities, right? So then that enthusiasm acts as a catalyst to following the regulative principles. So this is the same as Krishna Anushilanam, which is continuous cultivation of activities favorable to Krishna consciousness. So there are two divisions in this. One is to constantly perform favorable activities, and the second is to be constantly vigilant in not performing the non-favorable activities. So both yam and niyam. So Prabhupada writes that if he becomes slack in following any of them, his progress will certainly be checked. Srila Rupa Goswami therefore recommends tat karma pravartanat. One must strictly follow the regulative principles of Vaidhi Bhakti. In addition to the four prohibitions of yama, there are positive regulative principles niyama, such as the daily chanting of 16 rounds on Japmala beads. These regulative principles must be faithfully performed with enthusiasm. This is called tat karma pravartanat, or varied engagement in devotional service. Right? So even the yamas are enthusiastically followed because it indicates faith. That when there is a prohibition, it should not be looked upon with resentment. And if there is an injunction, that should also be positively followed. One should enthusiastically take to the chanting of the holy name and other injunctions that are given. So there was an example in ISKCON that there was a devotee who simply could not chant. Now he was very active in performing services, right? So he once went to Prabhupada and he said that if you say that bhakti is on an absolute platform and then all activities are the same, so when I'm serving at the temple or I'm chanting, it's the same. So why are you asking me to chant? I'll just serve at the temple. Right? So they were arguing back and forth, and then he also said, the purpose of chanting is service. If I'm already doing service, why am I chanting? So ultimately Prabhupada said, you should chant because I told you to do so. So bhakti begins with following the orders of the spiritual master. Right? So tat karma pravartanat is that one sincerely follows the order of the spiritual master. Not everything would be visible to us, because Prabhupada knew that if one does not chant and serve, that service is going to be temporary. The energy to do spiritual service comes from chanting. Chanting is the fuel that creates this spiritual energy by which one is able to do services. Otherwise, there are so many people who come and go and they serve for some time, but the consistency, the persistence that is all fueled by the spiritual power from chanting. That's what Prabhupada was saying. If you don't chant, your service will not be there. So chant, chant, chant. And he was saying can't, can't, can't. In the earlier days of ISKCON, so when Prabhupada initiated his first set of 11 disciples, so the threshold for initiated disciple was to chant 64 rounds. So when Bhaktisiddhanta actually had he had kind of two guiding principles, that those who were full-time devotees, they would chant 64 rounds. Those who were grahasthas, they would chant 16 rounds. So initially when Prabhupada gave initiation, so this is something that I personally heard from Mukund Maharaj. Mukund Maharaj was one of the first devotee to be initiated by Prabhupada. So Prabhupada called him to the room before the day of the initiation and said, now that you're initiated, you'll have to chant 64 rounds. And Mukund Maharaj says that he was at that time chanting 16 rounds, it would take 2 hours. So he did the maths, and then he said it's 8 hours, Prabhupada, too difficult to do it, and he knew he couldn't chant that long. So then Prabhupada said, okay, 32 rounds. And Mukund Maharaj was still quiet. And then he said, okay, 16 round, but that is minimum there, right? And that became the standard. Now one might say that why 16? Why not 15? Why not 17? Why not 11 rounds? Why not as much as you can? So this is tat karma pravartana. It's 16 rounds because it is ordained by the spiritual master. If Prabhupada had said 18 rounds, then it would have been 18 rounds, right? But Prabhupada said 16 rounds. And of course, the Guru does not give instructions whimsically. Prabhupada gave that instruction because his Guru was also giving that instruction. And Bhaktisiddhanta was giving that instruction because he learned that from Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, right? So the instructions flow through the parampara. And the principle of 16 rounds is Sankhya Asankhya. Right? Sometimes people say, why 16 rounds? I chant all day. And the answer is good. Then you should at least chant 16 rounds. Right? So Sankhya means counting, and Asankhya means without counting. So the principle is that by counting you should chant 16 rounds. And after that you can chant the whole day. One should not go the other way around saying that I'm always chanting, so I'm sure I'm doing 16 rounds, right? But Prabhupada said, okay, then you count and do 16 rounds, and then you can chant the remaining part of the day. Because the nature of the mind is this, that if you just say I'm always chanting, then whether you're chanting 1 round or 2 rounds or 5 rounds, it depends on the color of your mood that day. But tat karma pravartanat is that you deliberately follow the regulative principles in their entirety. The instruction is chant 16 rounds. Right? At the time of initiation, the instruction is that you will chant a minimum of 16 rounds. Right? And the disciple says, yes, I will chant a minimum of 16 rounds. Which means that you take the japmala and you count on it and chant 16 rounds of it. So this is the basis of one's spiritual advancement, that you chant and refrain from the sinful activities as given by the 4 regulative principles. Prabhupada says that chanting will give the strength to follow the regulative principles. Now in some cases, people are not able to follow the regulative principles, and Prabhupada says, does not matter. You continue chanting. Right? So chanting is the fountainhead of all the Shakti that we get in the execution of Bhakti. Now it may manifest more so in some cases and less so. In some cases people chant and the chanting gives them the strength to follow regulate all the yams and niyams. In some cases it does not. It all depends on one's own relationship with the holy name and past advancement. But the the instruction is that regardless of whether you're able to follow the regulative principles or not, whether you're able to do the services that you aspire to do or not, one should not give up chanting. That is rule zero. That is the foundation of one's devotional life. Chant, and for people who are not able to chant 16 rounds, the instruction is chant a fixed number of rounds. Sometimes people say, especially in the earlier days, they say, I don't have time to chant 16 rounds, or I find it difficult to sit for 2 hours and chant 16 rounds. Then the instruction is chant a fixed number of rounds. Even if you're chanting one round, then make that commitment that whether I'm busy or whether I'm not, whether my mind is cooperating or not, I will chant that one round every day. So the potency of that is that as one surrenders to that instruction, then the chanting will give the strength to surrender to further instructions from 1 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16, and then following the regulative principles. Okay? And now in extreme cases, and so this is Prabhupada casting a wide net. So there may be some people saying that I can't even chant one round. Prabhupada says, okay, don't chant. At least hear from devotees. Nowadays there are so many ways to hear. You can turn on lectures in YouTube and on different SoundCloud, etc. So hearing will establish that conviction to chant. One may say, I can't even hear. Then at least take prasadam. That will connect you to Krishna. Everybody likes to eat. So just honor prasadam. One may say, I don't even like prasadam. Then at least associate with the devotees in a favorable way. Now, this does not mean that you're compromising the standards. It means that you're meeting the person at their level so that they can then be elevated. Fifth is Sangatyaga, which is giving up the association of non-devotees. Right? So interestingly, the word Sangha means merging. So like they have Sangam. Sangam is the merging of Ganga, Yamuna and Saraswati. So Sangha means merging. So Sangha is the power of association. It is so powerful that the qualities of the people in the Sangha, they merge. They become so pervasive that it is difficult to distinguish that this is my quality and this is the quality that I have taken from the person that I am associating with. So giving up the association of non-devotees does not necessarily mean that you start boycotting them. That as soon as you see the non-devotee, you cross the road. Right? So giving up Sangatyaga means that you do not take their intimate association, because then that Sangam will happen. That if you start taking association from non-devotees, then whatever materialistic conception they have, based on lust, anger, envy, greed, based on material aspirations, that the devotee will start also Sangha. They will start absorbing that there. Okay? So in the previous verse, the prohibition was Jan Sangha, that the association with worldly minded persons. Right? So there it was negating a positive, here it is positing a negative. Right? And Prabhupada mentions that association is so important that Rupa Goswami mentions it twice. One says 6 of a dozen and one says half a dozen. Right? So once he says that Jan Sangha is do not associate with worldly minded people. And here he says Sangtyaga, give up the association of worldly minded people. So in an ideal case, devotee association is recommended. However, one should not think that as long as I have devotee association, it is okay for me to associate with non-devotees. right? Because like that example that is given, that in milk you may put sugar and it becomes sweet, but all it takes is one drop of lemon juice in order to curdle it. So yes, one may experience the sweetness of devotee association, but if one also intimately associates with non-devotees, their bhakti will be spoiled. So the easiest way to give up the association of worldly minded people is to surround oneself with devotees. Now, practically speaking, we may not be able to do that. We may go to work and not very few people there would be devotees. But there, then the principle is that one does not take association. Right? One is also careful about what they, how intimately they allow themselves to associate with non-devotees. So Narottam Das Thakur says, Tanera Charan Sevi Bhakta Sane Vas. That one has to live in the company of pure devotees and execute the regulative principles laid down by the previous acharyas, the 6 Goswamis. Right? Because the nature of the soul is, it is hankering for happiness. And the fountainhead of happiness is relationships. So one can surround oneself with so many material things, but they will not really give lasting happiness. Even if you look back to your life, the happiest moments are there when you're with somebody that was special to you, because relationships are the fountainhead of happiness. And because the soul is seeking happiness, it seeks relationships. And the best way is to direct that propensity towards devotees. That one actively surrounds oneself with devotees, develops intimate association with devotees, and this nature of association is going to be expanded in the fourth verse. So once Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was asked by one of his Grahastha devotees about the general principles of Vaishnavas, and Mahaprabhu immediately said, Asanga, Asat Sang Tyaga, A Vaishnav Achar. That in order to remain a devotee, one should give up Asat Sangha. Asat Sangha is those who are invested in the Asat, which is material. So characteristically, a Vaishnava is one who gives up the association of worldly people or non-devotees. So there are two aspects of Asat Santyag. So one is to give up the association of undesirable people. So people who are too much vested into karma, gyan, yoga, people who are atheistic. And the second aspect of Asat Santyag is Tanera Charan Sevi Bhakta Sane, to live in the company of devotees. So Asat Santyag also includes in it Sattang Grahan, that one gives up the association of non-devotees and one takes the association of devotees. Prabhupada would say that one should even give up the association of family members if they are impediments in bhakti, asat sang tyag. Now, important to understand that what does giving up association means. So it does not mean that one stops talking to them and one rejects them, saying you're no longer my parents or my siblings. It just means that one changes the mood of association. That instead of taking association, you begin to give association, which means that you do not get influenced by their material conception, but by your own spiritual conception, you influence them. Right? That is Sang Tyagat. So one gives up intimate association and keeps a mental distance. So Sang Tyagat is also giving up association with things that are not useful for Krishna consciousness. Like one may have cultivated habits or may have cultivated routines that are wasting time. like watching too many movies or things like that. So Sanktyagat is also giving up those bad habits or materialistic habits. In the fifth canto, Srila Prabhupada says the human body is just like a junction. So junction means that you can go to different paths from there, depending on how you steer yourself. So one can go to the path of material association, or one can do asat sanktyagat and go to the path of spiritual association. So the last one is Shatuvrata, which is following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. They are also called Sadhu Vrata. So in the Nectar of Devotion, out of the 64 items of devotional service, the first 10 items are considered to be preliminary activities in the discharge of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. So Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti is bhakti that is sadhana means that is practiced, and Vaidhi means according to the vidhi, according to the instructions of the scriptures. So sadhu is one who does sadhana. And sadhu is one who follows the scriptures. Right? So Srila Prabhupada says that following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas who expertly filled every moment of time with Krishna conscious activities. That is Shatuvrata. Shatuvrata does not mean that one follows anybody and everybody. Shatuvrata means that one follows the sadhus. And who is the sadhu? Sadhu is one who is himself doing sadhana. And sadhana means that he is acting according to the instructions of his own guru and the scriptures. So it is said that more important than prachar is achar. Anybody can sit on a seat and make big statements, but what actually matters is what do they do themselves. One may sit and say that you should be completely detached from everything material. You should be completely detached from your body. And then the moment something happens to their body, they become bewildered. So, more important than achar is prachar. How do you act yourself? And when you find such people who are sadhus, then you follow in their footsteps. And following the footsteps may be by following the instructions that they give you, following the writings, what they have written in the books, following those who are following them. So in different ways one can follow. So Prabhupada gives an example of Shatuvrata. Right? So so he had constructed the morning program at the temple as from 4 a.m. till 9 a.m. Right? So those who have gone to the morning program of the temple starts with Mangalarti, Tulsi Puja, Jap, then after that greeting of the deities, then there is a class, then after that breakfast prasadam, then devotees would go out for preaching, sankirtan, reading, come back, serve the deities, clean the temple, etc. So when one follows in the footsteps of people who have completely dedicated all their waking moments in the service of the Lord, one becomes purified themselves. That's the purity of Shatuvrata. So bhakti is performed on Vishuddha Sattva, the platform of pure goodness. Right? So there is the material platform of goodness, and then there is Vishuddha Sattva, which is the platform of goodness which is completely free from the contamination of the three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Right? So Shatuvrata means that one reaches that platform of Sata. Right? So previously we were saying Shatuvrata is following the footsteps of the acharyas. Here what it means is executing bhakti on the platform of Shuddha Sattva, which means that without any material contamination. Wherever there is material contamination, there is an expectation of reciprocation. Now, vritti also means propensity, occupation. In general, it means saintly behavior. So, Shatuvrata thus means that one behaves like the Shata. One behaves like those who are saintly. Right? So, this Shatuvrata also means emulating the behavior of the advanced devotees. Right? So, it means to be properly situated in the proper ashram, not to pretend, no, to be straightforward, no duplicity. Right? So, it goes beyond just emulating the actions of the sadhus. It means that cultivating the qualities of the sadhu. Right? So sadhu, one of the meaning of the sadhu is that the sadhu is straightforward. Right? So more than just externally behaving like the sadhu does, Shatuvrata means that also understanding the qualities of the sadhu and cultivating those qualities. And the result of this is, as Prabhupada says, that devotional service means transcendental activities. On the transcendental platform, there is no contamination of the three modes of material nature. This is known as Vishuddha Sattva, the platform of pure goodness, which is free from the contamination by the qualities of passion and, and ignorance. And this point was earlier made also. So, considering the meaning of Vrita as occupation, Shatuvrita also means that one should be occupationally situated properly. Now, in the current day and time, most of the occupations are not conducive to devotion. But then there are certain occupations that are specially not conducive. For instance, somebody works in a butcher house. Right? Very difficult to practice your devotion if all day you're killing animals. So Shatuvrata also means that picking an occupation that is conducive to. So Vrata is occupation and Shatu means that is conducive to the mode of goodness. So Prabhupada would generally say that because people spend most of the waking time in their workplace, occupation is important. Prabhupada would recommend that try to work for yourself. Try to do a business that is conducive to Krishna consciousness. So many disciples, they started like incense. They would sell incense, or they would sell devotional paraphernalia, or they would keep goshala. So things that were very strongly in the mode of goodness. Not always possible, but the guidance is that at least avoid those that are overtly unfavorable to to devotion. If one works in a very passionate environment, or one works in an environment where there is a lot of lust and anger and envy, then it will affect one's consciousness, because 5 days a week, 8 hours in the day, that's what you would live in. Most of your waking time is over there. Now somebody might say that better for me to not work, but live in the temple. Right. Now, living in the temple has that advantage that what is your occupation over there? Serving the devotees, serving the deities. Right. But that itself is also very austere. Like becoming a full-time devotee is very austere, because one lives in a firstly one lives in a fishbowl. That everybody that is coming is watching you to take inspiration from you. So as soon as the person says, I'm living in the temple, the person gets elevated to a higher platform. And then everybody is observing, how does this person react to this situation? What does this person do to take vacations? How is this person materially situated, right? And with so much of scrutiny, either you come up to the expectation or you burn yourself coming up to the expectation. And the other aspect, of course, is that those who are living in the temple, they have also to deal with the people who are coming from outside. Right? So they see people coming in expensive cars, they see people taking expensive vacations or eating in restaurants. And if they're not fully they're not fully situated in the spirituality, it makes them resent them, it makes them feel frustrated. So actually better to better to work outside and serve inside rather than to live in the ashram and work outside. So many times people live in the temple and they start working outside, but better to take a work that is not very rajasic or tamasic, and then serve the temple rather than say that I give up my work, live in the temple, and then try to the serve the outside. Prabhupada, because he wanted to create the Shatuvrata, he wanted to create communities based on Varnashram that are self-sufficient and isolated, like Gita Nagari, New Vrindavan, the Govardhan Eco Village, the community in Hungary. So the environments they protect, they give devotee association, they give sufficient engagements to keep people busy, but nevertheless they are austere. They're like living in an ashram. So one should be sufficiently advanced to be able to make this a life choice. So Prabhupada says in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Mahatmanastu Mam Partha. Right? So those who are engaged in devotional service, they are Mahatma, because they are on the platform of transcendental goodness. All good qualities appear in them. And those who are engaged in mundane activities, jnani, yogi, karmis, philanthropists, nationalists, communists, capitalists, whatever, they will never attain the stage of Mahatma. They will remain Duratma, which is cripple-minded. So one should identify the Mahatmas and follow them. One should not follow the Duratmas. So conclusion, that we are following this ABCD advice of having the right attitude, the right behavior, the right consciousness, the right character, the right direction. Rupa Goswami assures us that one will make progress in devotional service. And accompanying these are the injunctions and the prohibitions which help to develop material detachment. Right? So this is the two processes that go hand in hand. That one cultivates qualities by which one develops spiritual attachment, and one also cultivates qualities by which one develops material detachment. Okay. And then the force of bhakti manifests. The devotional service is so pure and perfect that once it has become, one is forcibly dragged to ultimate success. It's a very interesting choice of words by Prabhupada. Now, forcibly dragged indicates that it is against your will and you're being beaten into it. But in this context, it's a good thing. Forcibly dragged means that one develops so much taste in it that one, even if they want, they cannot give up. And sometimes when you hear about drug addicts, then the taste of their addiction forcibly drags them. And this is, of course, in a bad way. That even though their mind says, I don't want to do it, the body says it's not good for me, but that addiction forcibly drags them. So in the same way, in a good way, bhakti is addictive. One experiences so much of peace and happiness and pleasure that one is forcibly dragged towards ultimate success. Prabhupada says that since all the devotees of the Lord are under the protection of His supreme potency, they should not deviate from the path of devotional service and take to the path of karma, jnana, and yoga. This is called Ussah Nishchaya Dhairya Tat Tat Karma Pravartana, enthusiastically executing the regulative principles of devotional service. So with this, we conclude our discussion on this text 3 of the Nectar of Instruction. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.